Looks like it's about 15 floors down from the top of the building.
Yeah, one of the eyewitnesses, one of our affiliates was talking to, said that she thought that this was on the 80th floor. We know that there's an open air deck 110 stories high, and the glass enclosed observatory is on the 107th floor. So there is the possibility that people may very well be trapped up there.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Jean Yearman.
You're very welcome.
Eyewitness here to a loud sonic boom she described as she was sitting inside her apartment, and she looked up and saw the side of the World Trade Center exploded into flames and black smoke. We are going to join another one of our New York affiliates, WABC, for their live coverage.
Plane overhead, and then all of a sudden I thought it sounded kind of louder. Then I looked up, and all of a sudden it smashed right dead into the center of the World Trade Center. Big flash of flame, fire coming out from all over. Then all the bricks is a huge hole right now. It almost looks like the plane probably went through. I'm not sure.
Winston, can you see? Are you on the north side there where the plane made contact?
Yes, I am.
Now, when you say a huge hole, one of our earlier witnesses, Libby Clark, said not much of the plane came down off the building. Much of it went
totally
right
into the building.
It's in the building, from what you can see.
Right.
Now, can you see if there's a lot of debris downstairs, Winston?
No, because it looked like it inverted. With the impact, everything went inside the building.
Inside.
The only thing that came out was a little bit of the outside awning. But I'd say the hole is, let me just get a better look right now.
Okay, go ahead. We'll wait.
I'd say the hole takes about, looks like 6, 7 floors were taken out. And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Winston, hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll tell you what's going on.
Okay, just put Winston on pause there for just a moment.
Okay, the whole building just exploded some more. The whole top part.
Okay.
The building's still intact. People are running up the streets. Am I still connected?
Winston, this would support probably what Libby and you both said, that perhaps the fuselage was in the building that would cause a second explosion such as that.
Well, that's what just happened then.
That certainly.
Yeah, people are running up.
We are getting word that perhaps.
Okay, hold on. The people here everybody's panicking.
All right, Winston, Winston, let me put Winston on hold for just a moment.
Okay, I don't know how much longer we're staying. I'm inside of a diner right now.
Well, Winston, you know what? If you could give us a call back, I just don't want to panic here on the air. Let's just take some of our pictures from News Chopper 7. Now, one of our producers said perhaps a second plane was involved, and let's not even speculate to that point, but at least put it out there that perhaps that may have happened. The second explosion would certainly back the theory from a couple of eyewitnesses that the plane fuselage perhaps stayed in those upper buildings. Now, if you look at the second building, there are both twin towers now are on fire. Now, this was not the case, am I correct? A couple of moments ago. This is the second twin tower now on fire, and we're going to check on the second flight if perhaps that had happened. This all began at about 8:48 this morning. Again, what we know, in case you're just joining us, a small plane, not a Cessna type or 5 or 6 seater, but instead perhaps a passenger flight, ran into the north side of the World Trade Center. As you can see, the second explosion that you're looking at now in the second twin tower, it has spread much debris, much more debris than the first explosion or the first accident. Is Winston still on the line with us? Okay, he's not there, but do we have, I'll just talk to my producer, do we have an eyewitness that perhaps sees better than we do from these pictures? Again, you can see that there is debris falling off.
Come on, dip.
Okay, we actually have an Eyewitness News reporter, Dr. Jay Adlersberg, who was downtown at the time, and he is on the phone with us live. Dr. Jay, what can you tell us?
Hello, Steve. I'm actually uptown at 86th and Riverside. I can see the World Trade Center from about half the building up to the top. And about 5 minutes ago, as I was watching the smoke, a small plane, it looked like a propeller plane, came in from the west, and about 20 or 25 stories below the top of the center, it disappeared for a second and then exploded behind a water tower, so I couldn't tell whether it hit the building or not, but it was very visible that a plane had come in at a low altitude and appeared to crash into the World Trade Center.
Dr. J, we're going to take a look at videotape just moments ago of the second plane hitting the World Trade Center. That is spectacular pictures. I don't know if you could see the plane, and that too was a passenger plane, if perhaps some type of navigating system or some type of electronics would have put two planes into the World Trade Center within, it looks like, about 18 minutes of each other. You want to go to? We have another copy. There is the second plane, another passenger plane hitting the World Trade Center. These pictures are frightening indeed. These are just minutes between each other. So naturally, you will guess and you will speculate and perhaps ask the question, if some type of navigating equipment is awry, that two commuter planes would run into the World Trade Centers at the same time. Our director, you're speaking in my ear at this point. You are looking at live pictures right now of the World Trade Centers. Again, we now have two passenger planes within 18 minutes of each other smashing into the World Trade Centers. Dr. J, are you still with us on the phone?
I'm still with you, Steve.
Dr. J, this is just frightening pictures indeed, and I would assume, or you would naturally think, that when
You've been listening to some of the coverage provided for us by our affiliate WABC out of New York City. Let's go now and check our other affiliate WNBC to get the latest. I'm sorry, WNYW here, live coverage here of this amazing picture we're getting from Lower Manhattan. Two planes, one hitting each of the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center.
They come by and they say, what happened, what happened? And you just got to say something hit the building and then something hit both buildings.
Well, we saw clearly, we didn't see the first one, but we saw clearly that a plane deliberately crashed into one of the upper floors of the World Trade Center. That was the second plane. So two planes crashed into the upper floors of each of the World Trade Center towers. And I understand now that Port Authority headquarters are in one of those buildings somewhere near that location.
Jim, I
yes?
don't know whether we've confirmed that this was an aircraft, or to be more specific, some people said they thought they saw a missile. Well, I don't know how people could differentiate, but we might keep open the possibility that this was a missile attack on these buildings.
Ali, I must say that we have an eyewitness who said it was a large plane that crashed first. And then as we were watching the live picture here in the studio, we saw a plane crash into the other tower of the World Trade Center. And again, let's just to be sure, there it is. There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
That is a very hard thing to watch.
And clearly,
these are incredible pictures that we're watching this morning. These, thanks to our affiliate WNYW in New York. You are looking at this picture. It is the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, both of them being damaged by impacts from planes. We saw one happen at about maybe 9 minutes before the top of the hour. And just moments ago, so maybe 18 minutes after the first impact, the second tower was impacted by another, what appeared to be another passenger plane. In fact, we've got some tape replay of that. Do we have the tape available right now? Here's the plate. Here is the tape. You see the plane coming in from what looks like the east side, and it blows into the building with the flames and the smoke billowing out the other side of the tower. It's hard for me to tell exactly which is the north side and which is the south side, but it appears it's coming out of the north side there. Incredible pictures. These happened just moments ago. And I believe we have someone with us on the line. Ira Firmer. We have Ira Firmer, the former NTSB spokesman. And you're watching these pictures as well with us, are you not?
Yeah, I'm with you on CNN.
What can you make of what we have seen, and particularly with this replay we just saw moments ago?
That's absolutely inexplicable. There shouldn't be any aircraft in that area, much less something heading what looked like deliberately for the World Trade Center tower.
You don't think there's any way this could be any kind of an accident, no kind of a navigational equipment failure or some sort of a navigational quirk by beacons or whatever?
No, you've got incredibly good visibility at this point, and no pilot is going to be relying on navigational equipment in such a circumstance that would cause them to crash into the World Trade Center.
How far out of the way from an approach to either LaGuardia or Kennedy would a plane have to be to hit the World Trade Center?
There are approaches that come up along the Hudson River, which is to the west of the World Trade Center, and those aircraft usually wind up going into LaGuardia. So you can come within a mile or two of the World Trade Center, but it is such a visible object as you're approaching New York City that it's just not possible for a pilot during the daytime to have taken a course that would put it right into the World Trade Center. A second occurrence within a few minutes is beyond belief.
And as you can see, there definitely is no weather problem, so weather would be definitely ruled out as a factor in this case.
Yes, the course is a normal course. I mean, for commercial pilots coming into New York, it certainly appeared from the video on CNN that the second aircraft was heading for the tower and that it was a commercial-sized aircraft.
Could you tell, have a better idea about what size that plane was? It was kind of hard for me to tell. You're an expert in these matters. Could you look at that tape and tell what size that plane was?
It would have to be slowed down, and you'd need more than one angle for it because you'd want to see how many engines on it, the shape of the tail.
Well, if it's possible, gang, could we go ahead and replay that tape right now? Do we have the tape ready of the second plane impacting? We're going to put that tape on in just a second. Here, we're about to roll it now. If you can, sir, I don't want you to speculate, but if you can, give us an idea of what you think might be at play here. What kind of plane we're talking about, or at least what size. If we're talking about one that would hold, say, 100 people, one that would hold 300 people. From what you see, we'll have to back the tape up further than that, guys. Here we go.
It's very hard to get a perspective on it. I don't know how far away we are at this, but that looks to me like it could be certainly a passenger jet and one of those aircraft that could hold 100 or more people. I caution you at this point to wonder whether or not that airplane was occupied by more than just a pilot or crew. We don't necessarily know that there were any passengers aboard that airplane.
Understood. Understood.
Darren Kagan joining the conversation here, sir, but there's no indication that there would be any air traffic on purpose in the area of the World Trade Center at this time of day, or any time of day for that matter.
Well, not directly into the World Trade Center.
No, but even close to it.
You would be clearing the World Trade Center by a few miles. Normal operations. And when you're looking at the pictures that you see with all this smoke and fire and all that, it's just absolutely unbelievable to think that a flight crew that wouldn't ordinarily see the World Trade Center, wouldn't ordinarily be on course, would now not see this as a flaming beacon to avoid.
Let me ask you this about the airspace. Given that it appears that two different airplanes have flown into the World Trade Center in 18 minutes, is it possible to shut down that airspace and keep another plane from doing something just like it?
I don't think that this represents an accident, and so I don't think that we're talking about having to now keep other aircraft away. This picture that CNN is broadcasting live is probably from a range of a couple of miles away, and you can see that.
No, certainly that, but if there was somebody who intentionally was trying to do the same thing again, is there a way to shut down the airspace to keep planes out?
No, you can't shut down airspace. There's no gate, there's no fence in airspace. All you can do is broadcast that that airspace is closed, but if someone is intent of breaking through it, that happens with our military airspace all the time off the coast.
I want to bring up a couple of points right now, if I may. We have just been told that President Bush has been informed of this incredible tragedy happening in New York. He did have an event scheduled at 9:30 this morning, which we were going to cover here. He has just canceled that event. We expect he will probably have some comments fairly soon, and we will bring those to you live the moment that we understand he is available. But I'd like to ask you once again, Ira, if I can get back to asking you about this particular crash. Is it possible that those who are tracking planes either at LaGuardia through the radar, can I give us some more information about exactly what happened here? Were these planes, I guess, using beacons to come in, or if there's some sort of identification of these planes as they approach the New York area?
Yes, there should be if they were under air traffic control. You've got one eyewitness telling you that the first aircraft flew from Westchester and flew down through Manhattan and directly into the World Trade Center, presumably the North Tower. And now you've got, you're showing the other aircraft coming in, looks to me like it would be from the west, into the other tower. Those planes could be, should be, normally would be under air traffic control, but it is also entirely possible for aircraft to fly into, through, or over New York, or in this case into a building in New York, without being under the control. And we use that word advisedly. All that means is information is what air traffic control is, and just operate and do whatever they want if they don't follow the rules of air traffic control.
I affirmatively thank you very, very much for your insight, and the longer we talk, the less convinced many will become that this was an accident. We thank you very much for your insight.
More information on that just ahead. Now we want to bring in Todd Harris. Todd, on the scene, saw what happened. Todd, are you with us?
Yes, I had a perfect view, and the plane was coming in. I noticed it a second before it hit the building. It looked like it was moving slowly, and it lined itself up to hit the building directly.
Are you talking about the first plane or the second plane?
The first plane.
And Todd, tell us exactly where you are, where you had this great view.
I was on Highway 278, like a dead-on view of the side that it hit the building.
All right, Todd, hang on. We're going to continue our conversation. Leon has something to jump in here with.
Yes, I'm checking the wires even as we speak. The Associated Press is reporting right now that the FBI in Washington is investigating reports that these two plane crashes are the result of foul play. There is a report here by the Associated Press of a possible plane hijacking. They don't say two, but they say a possible plane hijacking. Let's go to Kelly Arena, who's on the phone right now from Washington. Kelly? Hello, Kelly. Kelly Arena, are you there? All right, Kelly Arena.
Okay,
there's Kelly. Kelly, what have you learned?
Okay, well, an FBI official has just told CNN that they are investigating, but they have not yet determined whether or not this was indeed a terrorist act. The official that I spoke to said that so far there has been no communication, no one claiming responsibility for either of those crashes. There is an investigation underway. If there is anything to be said officially, it will come out of the New York City field office of the FBI, which is right now involved in that investigation to find out whether or not it was. But I have to tell you, I repeat, right now the FBI has not determined whether or not this is a terrorist act, although they are investigating.
All right, thank you very much. Kelly Arena, we appreciate that. Darren,
Let's go ahead and bring back in Todd Harris. Todd, are you still with us? We don't have Todd. Okay, once again, if you're just joining us, the breaking story that we're following out of New York City, within the span of 18 minutes, two separate planes crashing into the World Trade Center. The rescue operations underway, not clear. We're going to show you, this is the second plane after the first tower was already on fire. This happened just minutes ago. We'll let the pictures tell the story. You saw it live here on CNN as it happened. The plane crashed right into the side of the World Trade Center, causing a huge explosion. Now, as we speak, and we're showing you live pictures now, smoke and fire taking place in both towers of the World Trade Center.
And it appeared that second plane that we actually did have on videotape, on its approach toward that tower, actually turned. And I have to think, I'm not an expert in these things, so I don't know, but it would seem as though that move actually may have caused much more damage. These are incredible pictures, as you can see here.
Let's keep the pictures up as we go ahead and talk to more eyewitnesses. Joe Trachtenberg joining us on the phone. Joe, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Can you tell us what your vantage point is and what you've seen so far?
Well, we got. I heard on the radio that one of the towers was on fire, and we went to a high point in our building, which is on the 25th floor, and you had a clear view of the both World Trade Centers, and the one tower was smoking hard. And there was another plane that was flying low, and we just looked at it, and before you know it, just kamikaze, boom, right into the other tower, and mass explosion, windows flying. It was horrible. I'm still distraught looking at it.
Were you close enough to see or get a general idea of what kind of plane that was that flew in the second time?
Well, I'm not an expert on planes, but it wasn't didn't seem like a big passenger jet. It was a smaller type plane because it made some pretty radical turn, and you know, they were flying low, and you're not used to see big planes flying over Manhattan because I don't think you're allowed to, but it was pretty tough.
And explain to me again what your vantage point is, where you are in the city looking at this.
We're in Chelsea. It's like 25th Street and 7th Avenue, and it's clear looking all the way downtown, and you could see the buildings, you know, the whole downtown, because it's a clear day, and it's a disaster.
And once again, describe for us what you saw as that plane went to the second building.
That plane just flew straight into the second building on the downtown side, it appeared. It was just a huge explosion, and smoke just immediately, and fire started immediately coming from the second tower as it hit, and there was glass flying everywhere.
All right, looks like we have a little bit of audio problem with that, so I'm going to say thanks to Joe Trachtenberg for talking to us and telling us what he saw. We were watching it right here, live on CNN, as that plane went in. He had a closer vantage point and could see, as you heard Leon, he was saying he doesn't think it was a big jet, but a smaller plane, closer up from where he could see it.
Well, we do have a tape of a recounting by another witness, another eyewitness. We're going to go to some tape that we're getting for our affiliate WABC in New York, where they interviewed an eyewitness who saw the second crash as it happened.
I'd say the whole takes about, looks like 6, 7 floors were taken out. And there's more explosions right now. Hold on, people are running.
Winston, hold on just a moment. We've got an explosion inside.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street.
Okay.
Hold on, I'll tell you what's going on.
Okay, just put Winston on pause there for just a moment.
Okay, the whole building just exploded some more. The whole top part.
Okay.
The building's still intact. People are running up the streets. Am I still connected?
Winston, this would support probably what Libby and you both said, that perhaps the fuselage was in the building that would cause a second explosion such as that.
Well, that's what just happened then.
That certainly.
Yeah, people are running up.
We're getting word that perhaps.
Okay, hold on. The people here everybody's panicking.
Keep in mind that the first plane hit about 8:48 a.m., so there had to already be a number of people at work inside the World Trade Center. We're going to go right now bring in Rose Arce, one of our producers here at CNN. She's with us on the phone and has with her a number of people who have escaped the building. Rose.
Yes, there's a huge crowd. I'd say about hundreds of people on the streets that come from south to north. I've been really thousands of people that have been running from inside these buildings. You know, it's a very heavily trafficked area in downtown, the World Trade Center. Many of them were inside the building when they felt the explosion. And they say there was just pandemonium. There was no warning, no alarms, no anything. Everyone just raced from their desks, ran downstairs, and now there's a steady stream of folks running away from the building. Some people saying that they're fearing there'll be another explosion, and when they saw the second plane, convinced that this was dangerous, there's just an absolute flood of folks escaping downtown Manhattan right now.
And Rose, do you have anybody with you that could talk about being inside the World Trade Center when this happened?
Right now, honestly, there are scores of people that are literally running by me. There's debris on the base of the building that has continued to fall, as you know, even as far as a block away from the building. And what's happened is that everyone seems to have figured out that there's ongoing danger, and there's just a stream of folks running as quickly as they can uptown away from this.
Understandably. What about rescue efforts? I would imagine there's still a number of people inside those buildings.
Well, right now what you see is there's trucks trying to get through, and people have actually jumped from the crowd and are trying to help direct traffic to try to get emergency vehicles there. There's no traffic going in the other direction, but because of the flow of people, it looks like some emergency vehicles are actually having trouble getting to the scene.
And from where you're standing, is there any kind of command center, any place that people are being directed toward?
Right now, what there is there's a crush of emergency vehicles and rescue vehicles, but they don't seem to be quite organized in any direction. There's fire department vehicles on the one side where you see the smoke coming out of the building. On the other hand, you see groups of police officers trying to organize the crowd in a more orderly fashion. I think there seems to be some fear on their part that such a huge crowd of people might injure each other on the way out.
All right, Rose Arce on the ground there near the World Trade Center. We continue our coverage live with the live pictures as we go.
And we're just now getting word again from the Associated Press now saying that the crash of these two aircraft into the towers of the World Trade Center in New York appear to be an act of terrorism. This, they are quoting a U.S. official. They did not say which department of this U.S. official was speaking from, or the authority this official was actually carrying at this particular point, but they're saying that a U.S. official is now saying to the Associated Press, it is official, well, he is saying at least, that these two aircraft crashes we've seen into each of the towers of the World Trade Center are the act of terrorism. We're just getting word now that President Bush is going to be coming out, and he's going to have comments momentarily. We understand we're keeping an eye on the picture from Sarasota. He's going to be returning to Washington almost immediately, we understand. Darren?
And in fact, as you mentioned, President Bush is in Florida today. We're supposed to have an education event just minutes from now. That has been canceled. Our Major Garrett is traveling with the president. Major, maybe you can tell us a little bit more on the president's immediate plans.
Good morning, Darren. President Bush, as you said, will make a statement here at Emma E. Booker Elementary School in Sarasota on the catastrophe at the Twin Towers in New York. Following that statement, the president will board Air Force One and return immediately to Washington. We are told by White House officials traveling with the president in Sarasota that he was notified either shortly before 9 a.m. or just shortly after. We don't have an exact moment of the notification of the president. We believe his chief of staff, Andrew Card, told him of the events in New York City. The president has been monitoring them as best as he can. He was, at one moment this morning, sitting reading a book to some of the elementary school children here as scheduled. Reporters asked him if he was aware of the situation in New York. He nodded a bit gravely and said he would have something to say about that shortly. We are expecting that statement any moment now. I can tell you here in Sarasota, with those traveling with the president, they are trying to sift through all of the amazing and terrifying both pictures and details as they can get them from New York City, but no confirmation here from White House officials about what this in fact is, whether it's accident or terrorism. They are trying to gather information as best they can, give it to the president, and trying to keep things on a very calm and even keel if possible.
And on that note, Major, it sounds like that exchange of questions with the president came at what would be a sensitive time if he was sitting in front of a bunch of school children and not wanting to scare the children.
Well, precisely. And the president has a way of letting reporters know that it's either an appropriate time or an inappropriate time to take questions. He does that in many different environments, many different situations. Clearly this morning with a crowd of children, he wanted to keep an even keel, keep the situation under control as best as possible. He just nodded and said, we'll talk about this later.
Right. So once again, we do expect to hear from the president soon. A time frame on that?
Within the next 10 minutes or so. Again, things are very much in flux. Things are a bit confused. The event here, which was scheduled to talk about education reform, talk about the importance of reading, that has been scrubbed, and the president is trying to gather whatever information, all the information he can from various White House sources, make a statement, and then get aboard Air Force One, get back to Washington just as soon as he can.
Major Garrett traveling with the president in Sarasota, Florida. Major, thank you very much. And of course, as soon as the president begins to speak, you'll see those comments live here on CNN. Leon.
I want to just inform you that we've just gotten word, according to Reuters news service, trading on the markets in New York have been postponed indefinitely. And we will try to keep an eye on that, but can't expect that to happen, get underway anytime soon. But we just heard our Major Garrett mention moments ago this investigation. We're just now getting reports here, the Associated Press, saying that U.S. officials are saying this is an act of terrorism. Let's go now to our David Enzor, who's on the phone right now, and give us some more information on what may be at stake there. David.
Well, Leon, I can just tell you that U.S. officials are also telling me that this is clearly not an accident in their view, and they do believe that terrorism is at the root of this. They believe this is a terrorist act. However, they have very little other information. Obviously, law enforcement agencies will be taking the lead on this, trying to find out who these, who was flying the planes, whether they had in fact been turned away from their regular flights, and so on. So very little information.
David, we're going to have to cut you off. President Bush is speaking.
A moment for America. I unfortunately will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary Rod Page and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
An emotional President Bush there speaking in Sarasota, Florida, cutting short his stop there, saying that an apparent terrorist attack has occurred on U.S. soil. They're mentioning the two planes that have crashed into the World Trade Center this morning. He says a full-scale investigation is underway to hunt down those responsible for this, saying terrorism will not stand.
And Leon, on the heels of the president's remarks, CNN has learned that at least one of the planes involved in this hit on the World Trade Center was an American Airlines 767, a Boeing aircraft that took off from Boston. What happened to that airplane as it took off from Boston and how it ended up at the World Trade Center, our details we'll have to fill in as we go. But let's go ahead and bring in our David Ensor. David, you were saying before we interrupted you for the president's remarks.
Well, unfortunately, the amount of detail that the officials who are tracking this have is pretty sketchy at this point. But I was just saying that officials are calling this an act of terrorism. They're saying that's clearly what it is, clearly not an accident. And law enforcement agencies, the FBI and others, will be taking the lead on this, officials say. And clearly, obviously, they will first try to ascertain who did this. What nationality are they? What's behind this? That's really all I can say. There are several places around the government. There are groups of officials gathering and setting up crisis centers to try and deal with the flow of information on this, which, as you can imagine, is going to be considerable as the day progresses.
And so far, as we know, no one has been taking responsibility for this.
There have been no claims of responsibility, and U.S. intelligence officials say they had no warning of anything like this coming along.
All right, David Ensor, thank you for joining us on the phone. Once again, you can see that information at the bottom of your screen. 2 different planes have flown into the World Trade Center within the last hour. One plane was an American Airlines Boeing 767 from Boston. In terms of how many people were on board that plane and if it was forcibly taken from Boston into New York, we still have yet to learn.
Well, we're joined now on the telephone by the former Federal Emergency Management Agency Director James Lee Witt. Director Witt, you're watching these pictures with us this morning. Your comments?
Well, it's just horrible. There's no doubt. I did see the one plane flying into the building. It's just unbelievable, something like this. But, you know, we've been for several years now, we've been working on terrorist-type events, and, and this is apparently one of those events that I do not know yet, but apparently it could be. And right now, I know I really feel for those families, but Richie and the New York Emergency Management, the state of New York, and I know they're very busy right now in the FBI and law enforcement, but this is one of those crisis management as well as a consequence management situation that they're going to have to be dealing with.
You know, the first thing that calls to mind to many of us who have been here to cover these events was the World Trade Center bombing back in was it '96 when that bombing occurred?
Yes.
And you were director of FEMA at that particular time. Since then, has there been a plan put in place for something like this, to recover from this, or to go through the exercises necessary to get people out and to recover from it?
Well, they have a very good plan in place, and for even events, not as this. I don't think I don't know if they put a plan in place for airline crashing into it, but I know they take every scenario they could think of and try to deal with a plan that will help them respond in the most effective way. And we even practice airplanes flying into igloos, and at some of the arsenals around the United States. So you try to practice for everything you can think of and hope for the best, and that you can be able to respond and hope none of this happens. But
well, on that note, then, did you run any kinds of tests at all, or any kinds of, I don't know, theoretical tests or computer tests or anything on something like this?
We didn't. I'm not sure if New York City did. I'm sure they did. But you can't. How can you stop something like this without having an anti-aircraft gun sitting on top of buildings?
Yeah.
You just can't. You can prepare the best you can be, and that's all you can do. But I'm sure that they've got everything in place and they always do an excellent job up there in New York.
Director James Lee Witt, former director of FEMA, we thank you very much for your time this morning. We may be talking with you later on. Darren.
As we continue our coverage, our Aaron Brown in New York City joining us now. Aaron, we can see over your left shoulder there the building still smoldering of the World Trade Center.
Well, it is a grotesque sight to look at from about 30 blocks away from where we are. For those of you just joining us, let's just briefly recap what we know. About an hour ago, about 8:45 Eastern Time, one plane crashed into the tower, the World Trade Center tower on the right, the first of those towers that you can see behind me. And then about a half hour later, a second plane crashed into the tower number 2. That's the one to the left, where the darker smoke is billowing out right now. We have reports, CNN has been told that one of the planes was an American Airlines 767 that had been hijacked from Boston. We don't know if that was the first or the second plane that hit the tower, but we do know that it was a 767 American Airlines jet. At least that's what CNN has been told by sources so far this morning. We also have reports of 1,000 injuries. That is unconfirmed, and we always remind you in moments like these that as these initial reports come in, it is very early. I can tell you, driving in, it is extraordinarily chaotic on the west side of New York. It is the kind of situation where numbers change, where situations change, but this is the information we have now, that there are at least 1,000 injuries, and we're working on that. As you can see, the smoke billowing out of the Trade Center. In Sarasota, Florida now, Major Garrett joins us. Major, what are you being told?
Hello. President Bush has notified, and talked rather, to Vice President Cheney. He has talked to the FBI Director, Robert Mueller, and he has also spoken with the Governor of New York, Governor Pataki, about this catastrophe. The President will convene a national security meeting upon his arrival back at Washington. Those are the 4 pieces of information we have gathered here in the moments since I just spoke to you on the telephone. The President, as we just saw a few moments ago, identifying this as an apparent act of terrorism against the United States, said there will be a full investigation. The entire apparatus, the United States government, FBI, national security, CIA, the Vice President, who you may remember was placed in charge of a domestic terrorism study group within the White House to monitor and develop plans to deal with a catastrophe of just this kind. All those parts of the government have been mobilized. The President is heading back to Washington very soon. Here's what the President said about this catastrophe at the Twin Towers in New York just a few moments ago here at Sarasota Elementary School.
Major, it's Aaron.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
The President was first notified about the situation in New York by National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice. Then the second notification updating him with more details on the situation came from his Chief of Staff, Andrew Card, who's traveling with the President here in Sarasota. The day was supposed to talk about education reform, but the President is scrubbing all of those plans, marshaling all the resources of the federal government, talking with his aides as he can, and preparing to fly back to Washington to, again, as we said, convene a National Security Council meeting. Back to you.
Major, before you get away, and I apologize if I'm asking you to repeat something, I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Do we know exactly where the President was when he was told?
He was just arriving here in Sarasota at Emma E. Booker Elementary School. He had taken an early morning jog this morning in Sarasota, had just arrived here with a presidential motorcade. Then the spectacular, horrific pictures began appearing on television sets here at the elementary school. The President received a telephone call from Condoleezza Rice, National Security Advisor. Then he received an update from his Chief of Staff, Andrew Card, traveling with him. Then it was made clear to the press traveling with the President he would make a statement Shortly before that statement, he was actually sitting down with some children here at the elementary school, reading them a book. Reporters asked him if he knew about the situation of the Twin Towers. He nodded and said he would talk about it momentarily. In fact, he did. We just heard the president's statement declaring this an apparent act of terrorism. Yes, Aaron?
Let me interrupt you here. Senator Kennedy is speaking in Washington. As again, one of the planes was hijacked from Boston. Perhaps we can hear the senator now.
This morning, we underline the point that it is postponed. We are not going to see the business of America deferred because of terrorism, whether it's in education or in any area of public policy. We're looking forward to hearing from the First Lady on a subject matter which is of central concern to all families in this country, and because of her experience and her leadership, this committee and the Congress and the American people would have benefited greatly from her comments, and we will look forward to an early
Senator Ted Kennedy in Washington. Chris Plant, a CNN producer, is at the Pentagon, where there is a significant fire. Chris, you're on the phone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Tell me what you know.
Well, arriving at the Pentagon a short time ago, there was a huge plume of smoke which continues to rise from the west side of the Pentagon over in the area where there is a helicopter landing zone. It's along Route 27 if you're looking at maps of the area. The building is currently being evacuated, and police and emergency units are, of course, responding from all around the building and from the local Arlington County Fire Department. The plume of smoke is enormous. It's a couple of hundred yards across at its base. It is billowing into the sky hundreds of yards. It's impossible for me to say from this side of the building whether the building itself is on fire or up in flames, or exactly what caused this. I did not hear an explosion, but there is certainly a very, very significant fire in this enormous office building on the west front. The building is being evacuated. The Defense Protective Service officers, the police force for the Pentagon, are on a very tight string right now. As I arrived, I was held at gunpoint.
Chris,
yes.
let me interrupt you for a second. Just hang on. Don't go anywhere. We're getting reports now that the White House is being evacuated as well. We don't know precisely what has caused that decision to be made, whether that is precautionary, whether something has happened at the White House. Again, the president is in Florida this morning, so the president is not in any danger, but the White House, of course, is fully operational, whether the president is there or not, and we have reports that the White House is being evacuated. Getting back to Chris in a moment, we also have reports now from Chris Plant on the scene that the Pentagon is being evacuated as well. All of this coming on the heels of a large fire at the Pentagon, and we can't tell you at this moment whether that fire is inside the Pentagon building itself or on the ground to the Pentagon. And these two planes that you can see behind us that hit the World Trade Center, that's Washington, the old executive office building, I believe, and you can see the plume of smoke behind it, which we will assume until we're told otherwise that that's the fire at the Pentagon. I believe that's correct. As you look now at Washington. So we've got a major fire at the Pentagon, and the Pentagon being evacuated, the White House being evacuated, and we don't know precisely the circumstances there, what caused that decision. And we have these two enormous explosions at the World Trade Center here in New York, where two planes slammed into the buildings. We are also getting reports now that there is a fire on the Mall in Washington, that part of the Capitol that runs essentially from the Capitol to the White House in kind of a straight line going up Washington, D.C., and we have reports of a fire there. What you're looking at now is Washington, at least if I can see the monitor in front of me. It's a little tricky from where we are, but that looks to me like the old executive office building, and then in back of it you see the large plume of smoke. Here in New York, sirens everywhere, people out on the streets staring at this grotesque scene of the World Trade Center buildings. It was in February of '93, if memory serves me correctly, that there was an attack, a terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. bomb exploded in the garage of the Trade Center on that day in February of '93. Here we are in the year 2001, and what appears to be deliberate attacks on the World Trade Center. And then we have these two reports out of Washington, the fire at the Pentagon. Chris Plant is still on the phone.
At the Pentagon, as they're being evacuated from the building, I am told by several people that there was, in fact, an explosion. I was told by one witness, an Air Force enlisted, senior enlisted man, that he was outside when it occurred. He said that he saw a helicopter circle the building. He said that it appeared to be a U.S. military helicopter and that it disappeared behind the building where the helicopter landing zone is, excuse me, and that he then saw a fireball go into the sky. I'm attempting to make my way around to that side of the building in my car right now to see if I can get a better visual perspective on the scene on that side of the building. But I can tell you that security has certainly clamped down. The U.S. Park Police, another federal law enforcement department, has arrived in force on the scene. There's a Park Police helicopter overhead. Every car that arrives at the gate where I was located was being stopped by officers at gunpoint. Everyone is being forced out of their vehicles as they arrive at the Pentagon. It's a very tense situation, obviously, but initial reports from witnesses indicate that there was, in fact, a helicopter circling the building, contrary to what the AP reported, according to the witnesses I've spoken to anyway, and that this helicopter disappeared behind the building and that there was then an explosion. That's about all I have from here.
Okay, let's do this, Chris. Why don't you continue reporting, and we'll pass along a couple of other things that we're picking up along the way. Trading at the New York Stock Exchange. The stock exchange, as many of you probably know, but some of you don't, is in that part of Lower Manhattan, not quite as far down as the Trade Center, but it is in that part of Lower Manhattan, and trading has been suspended there. Bridges and tunnels coming into New York have been closed. That will create a whole different set of problems. We are also being told that the FAA has suspended takeoffs and landings, and I want to make sure I get this right, guys, that in at all airports around the country. Air travel in this country has come to a halt this morning, as clearly people in government, police forces, fire departments are trying to figure out what exactly is going on. There are several now incidents that look, for all that we can tell, to be a major terrorist attack here in the United States. So all airports all across the country are closed. All bridges and tunnels coming into Manhattan are closed. The Pentagon has been evacuated, or is being evacuated. The White House is being evacuated. The president, who is in Sarasota today to make a speech on education, has spoken briefly to cameras and will shortly make his way back to Washington. They are checking out Air Force One now. Let's go to Atlanta. Chad Myers can talk to us a bit about the air traffic problems. Chad, are you there?
Aaron, yes. All of the airports across the country have been shut down. We started with Zone New York, which includes Islip, Newark, JFK, LaGuardia, all the way down to Philadelphia, and then IAH, Houston, and then San Francisco, and then LA. They were just falling like a deck of cards, and then all of a sudden the FAA just said, we're shutting down everything. All flights have been canceled for another 7 hours, which is about 5 o'clock Eastern time, and then we'll reignite there. We'll take a look what's going on after that. The probability of extension, as they call that, is high, which means even after 5 o'clock, the airports may still be shut down. We'll keep watching it for you here from Atlanta.
Chad, and if you don't know, just say you don't know. Can you recall a situation where every airport in the country had been shut down?
Absolutely not, except in wartime, of course, Aaron, and obviously this is not that. But with all the airports, as they were going down from west to east, we could see them, and then we could eventually see from New York, and then they canceled Boston, as we got the report that the first flight, or one of the possible hijack flights, did come out of Boston, and then it just started going down from there. But never, ever before have we ever seen all of the airports shut down like this, not this quickly.
Chad, thank you. Stay on this for a while. We'll get back to you. We know that many people are just joining us, we want to get everyone on the same page before we move on. So one more time, let's go through the sequence of events. At about 8:45 Eastern Time, a plane crashed into the foremost of those towers that are the World Trade Center. That's Air Force One you see in Florida, the president on board. Obviously extraordinary security around the plane before the president got on, and the president is heading back to Washington. A short time ago, the president made a statement. He said, terrorism against our nation will not stand. The government will hunt down those responsible. Mr. Bush said today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 planes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on the country. And we also have a report now that it was a plane that crashed into the Pentagon, and we have a large fire at the Pentagon. The Pentagon is being evacuated as we speak now. The White House has been evacuated as well. CNN's John King joins us on the phone. John.
Aaron, I'm standing in Lafayette Park directly across from the White House, perhaps about 200 yards from the White House residence itself. The Secret Service has pushed most people all the way back to the other side of the park, trying to avoid having that done to me at the moment. Just moments ago, they started slowly evacuating the White House about 30 minutes ago, and then in the last 5 minutes, people have come running out of the White House and the old Executive Office building, which is the office building right directly across from the White House. About 10 minutes ago, there was a white jet circling overhead. Now, you generally don't see planes in the area over the White House. That is restricted airspace. No reason to believe that this jet was there for any nefarious purposes, but the Secret Service was very concerned, pointing up at the jet in the sky. It is out of sight now, best we can tell, but they've evacuated the entire White House staff and the old Executive Office, as well as some townhouses that are government offices. Many of our viewers might know Blair House, where other international leaders stay when they are in Washington. That block of townhouses has been evacuated as well, and they are pushing us now back toward H Street, which is the next main street to the north from Pennsylvania Avenue across from the White House.
Okay, John, hang on one second. We're also getting reports at the Capitol, the Treasury building also being evacuated. John, is this evacuation from the White House, was it orderly? Did it seem panicky? How would you characterize it?
It started off as orderly, much like we get when there are occasional bomb scares near the White House, but then, again, in the last 10 minutes or so, the people who came out the last several hundred I saw leaving the grounds were told and ordered by the Secret Service to run. They were running through the gates. These are, of course, professionals in business suits. I'm also told that prior to that, and we don't know the current situation, that the Vice President and other administration officials on the scene were meeting in the White House Situation Room, which is in the basement of the White House. Whether they have stayed on the complex or not is unknown to us at this moment. I spoke to an administration official shortly after the President delivered his statement, who said, obviously, the operating assumption here is terrorism. The initial assumption, this official said, was that this had something to do, or at least they were looking into any possible connections with Osama bin Laden. The administration recently released a warning that they thought Osama bin Laden might strike out against U.S. targets.
Just to add, John, a bit to what you've been saying, we're getting a report from Associated Press now that the White House was evacuated after the Secret Service received what AP is describing as a credible, a credible threat of a terrorist attack against the White House itself. And I expect you'll be checking that out. We'll try and confirm that, but that's what AP is reporting right now. Again, this all began about an hour and 15 minutes ago here in Lower Manhattan when the first of 2 planes crashed in to the first of the 2 towers behind me at the World Trade Center, and you can see the smoke billowing out of the front tower now. And then about a half an hour later, just as emergency crews were converging on the scene, as eyewitnesses were gathering on the street corners, a second plane drove in too, and you can see that plane coming around the building right now in this tape, and there you can see the hit as it comes through what looked to me, at least, and this is the first time I've seen that tape, come through the back side of the tower. I guess that would be the south side of the tower, and then the smoke and flame coming out the front side. Again, that was about a half hour after the first attack, which was at about 8:45. Look, you want to be careful here. We don't want to get too far ahead of this, but obviously this has all the appearances of an extraordinarily well-coordinated and devastating terrorist attack here in the United States. certainly nothing like it since Oklahoma City and nothing like it here in New York since the terrorist attack on the same World Trade Center buildings in February of 1993. At the Pentagon, a plane or a helicopter has crashed, apparently as part of whatever this operation has been, and Jamie McIntyre is there. Jamie, what are you hearing?
Well, Aaron, there is a lot of confusion here at the Pentagon. It appears that something hit the Pentagon on the outside of the 5th corridor, on the Army corridor. Several Army officers I talked to reported hearing a big explosion, seeing shards of metal coming past their window. The Pentagon has been evacuated. Emergency services personnel were rushing to reports of several people trapped in the building. Most of the building's 24,000 people are outside of the building or in the center courtyard as emergency teams try to sort out what has happened here. There is, of course, thick black smoke billowing from the scene. There's a lot of confusion. The Defense Protective Service, which is the police force here in the Pentagon, has been urging people to get out of the building and move away from the scene so they can handle the emergency situation. Again, it appears that an aircraft of some sort did hit the side of the Pentagon, the west front, which faces sort of toward Arlington National Cemetery. It's a corridor where a lot of Army offices are located.
Wow.
And some people were...
Jamie, I need you to stop for a second. There has just been a huge explosion. We can see a billowing smoke rising, and I'll tell you that I can't see that second tower, but there was a cascade of sparks and fire, and now it looks almost like a mushroom cloud explosion, this huge billowing smoke in the second tower. This was the second of the 2 towers hit. And I cannot see behind that smoke, obviously, as you can either. The first tower in front has not changed, and we see this extraordinarily and frightening scene behind us of this second tower, now just encased in smoke. What is behind it, I cannot tell you. But just look at that. That is about as frightening a scene as you will ever see. Again, this is going on now in 2 cities. We have a report that there is a fire at the State Department as well, and that is being evacuated. So we've got fires at the Pentagon evacuated, the State Department evacuated, the White House evacuated on the basis of what the Secret Service describes as a credible terrorist threat. We have 2 explosions, 2 planes hitting the World Trade Center here in New York, and what this second explosion was that took place about a part of the south, that would be the South Tower, has apparently collapsed. We don't know if that was from the impact of this first plane that hit it or whether something else has happened there, and we'll work on that. Our Washington Bureau Chief, Frank Cesno, is on the phone. Frank, what are you hearing?
Aaron, I just drove past the Pentagon across the 14th Street Bridge, which is now choked with traffic. We're beginning to hear emergency sirens and rescue personnel standing out across Washington. There is a gigantic black billowing cloud of smoke that is rising over the Pentagon. You heard Jamie McIntyre a moment ago describe where that was coming from. I can also tell you that local radio, in addition to talking about evacuations, as we've heard at the Pentagon, the White House is reporting that the Capitol building has been evacuated and the Treasury Department has been evacuated. Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, is exceptionally tense and clearly taking steps as if it is virtually under siege here. We don't know specifically, as you've said, what has taken place at the Pentagon, but this is very serious, striking at the heart of the national government. And as John King was explaining, the White House
Frank, it's Aaron. I need to interrupt you for a second. Again, there has been a second explosion here in Manhattan at the Trade Center. We are getting reports that a part of the tower, the second tower, the one a bit further to the south of us, has collapsed. We are checking on that. We are also told that the Sears Tower in Chicago has been evacuated, and what I can't tell you on that is whether there was something specific that happened there, whether there was an attack on that building yet, we're checking that out, or whether there was a warning, whether there was a threat of some sort, or whether that is simply precautionary. What we can tell you is that just in the last several minutes here, 2 or 3 minutes. A second or third, I guess technically, extraordinary event has happened here in Lower Manhattan. You can see this extraordinary plume of smoke that is, or was at least, the second tower of the World Trade Center. Perhaps 3 or 4 minutes ago, you could, from where we were standing, see that second building that is just a bit to the south of the first building, but you can't see it anymore. It is covered with smoke. A large plume of smoke also coming still from the first tower, where the first plane hit at about 8:45. We can, by the way, if we can cue the tape, we can show you that second attack, or at least the second explosion in the Trade Center that occurred at about 9:15 Eastern Time. As you can imagine, there you can see to the right of your screen a plane coming in. We do have a report of a hijacked American Airlines plane. It comes into the south side, and then boom, you can see the fire coming out the front, or the north side of the building. I guess that'd be the northeast side of the building. And then just in the last several minutes, there has been a second explosion, or at least perhaps not an explosion, perhaps part of the building simply collapsed. And that's what we saw, and that's what we're looking at, as smoke now just covers Lower Manhattan, almost as far to the end of Manhattan Island as you can get, is where the trade centers are. The Sears Tower in Chicago has been evacuated, and we continue to check on the circumstances there. The Pentagon, the State Department, and the White House have been evacuated in Washington as well. The President has, we can show you now what happened just a few moments ago at the Trade Center. Watch the building to the left, to the back of those two buildings. This is just a few minutes ago. We don't know if something happened, another explosion, or if the building was so weakened it just collapsed. But we have one of our producers on the phone, and I didn't get the name, so why don't we just go ahead? You there?
Yeah, this is Rose Arcee calling from New York.
Rose, tell me what you know.
Just a few minutes ago, we saw there's a portion of the building where the first plane struck that seemed to be buckling inside itself, almost as if the top of the building was going to fall. Shortly after that, two people, it's hard to tell whether they were being pushed or they physically approached themselves the sort of river side of the building, it would be the west side of the building, and appeared to jump from the top floors, just under where you're seeing the smoke and fire.
That is extraordinary. The South Tower, the World Trade Center, has collapsed. Again, tell me, how long ago was it that you saw this?
This must have been about 5 minutes ago, and prior to that, you could see heads popping out of windows right beneath where that big gaping hole is. So there appeared to be people alive right below where the crash point was that were trying to find some way out of there. And just as the thing started to buckle, you saw them plummeting from that top floor.
Right, and perhaps this is stating the obvious. We apologize for that, but obviously people were already at work here at the Trade Center when this happened. We don't know how many people have been hurt in all of this. We have no idea at this point. As you look at an aerial shot coming from I guess that would be coming from the south of the Trade Center, or what is at least the Trade Center behind those huge plumes of smoke. All airports across the country, every airport in the United States has been shut down as the FAA and the government tries to figure out exactly what has happened, what is at risk, what is not, who is behind it. Are there more explosions, more attacks yet to come? Here in New York, trading on the New York Stock Exchange has been suspended, at least for now. All bridges and tunnels coming into the city have been shut down as police try and clear the way. We can tell you, as we were coming in perhaps an hour ago, there was a convoy, I can't think of a better word, a convoy of fire and police trucks racing down the West Side Highway, and this is in the middle of rush hour. Obviously, every available fire unit here in Manhattan has been brought to the Trade Center. Outside the White House, John King, our senior White House correspondent. John.
Hello, Aaron. They have pushed us even further back away from the White House now, and there are More than a half dozen fire trucks, some of the Secret Service now patrolling the perimeter in Lafayette Park, which is directly across from the White House, have automatic rifles drawn to keep people away from the park, and they're policing back and forth. You can probably hear additional fire apparatus arriving on the scene. Senior White House staff.
Explosion occurred when the plane hit the building.
I saw it from my office, as a matter of fact, down the Lower East Side.
So, you came here?
Yes.
To check it out?
Help. No, what do you mean? To see if we can help, but this is...
Yeah. This poor woman. Wow.
Rick Leventhal is the one reporting on the ground. He's not able to hear me at this moment. But Rick...
Just the sound of a plane.
Guard jets.
All right. What are you guys doing right now? What's your assignment? What's your assignment?
Help people.
Are there a lot of injured?
Where were we, down there?
The dust is still thick in the air. What that guy is covered with is this stuff that's all over the street. Just thick soot, ash. Just came roaring down here in a huge cloud from the World Trade Center. You see just the survivors, if you will. Are you able to talk? Can we just talk to you about what happened?
I was there when it exploded.
You were right there at the building?
Yes, a lot of people trapped. You're right?
A lot of people trapped. EMT. This guy needs help.
Rick Leventhal is not able to hear me, but from his vantage point on the ground, I think it's not clear to him what's fairly clear to us,
looks like here.
our vantage point from the helicopter, that the top of Tower 1, One World Trade Center, has literally crumbled. I can't guess how many floors, perhaps 30, perhaps 40.
The tower itself is, what I think, 107 stories tall, Tower 1 and Tower 2, one in the south end, one in the north end. It appears that the first plane that hit the one in the north end. That has the restaurant, Windows in the World upstairs, and then the south towers appears to be the one that was hit the second time. That has the observation deck. That is a obviously popular tourist attraction for people. So clearly, as we see, a pandemonium. But you know, John, the FBI and the New York City Police Department have the Joint Terrorist Task Force. They have obviously experience with this. They were able to solve the others, and I'm confident, and we should be confident that...
Let's go to Brian Wilson now. He's at the in Washington. Brian, is there a report about the Pentagon?
Well, I can't tell you about that, but I was just here in front of the Capitol, which, by the way, has been evacuated, and back toward the Supreme Court area, we just heard a low, muffled thud. It sounded like a small explosion. Sirens are going off around this city like you cannot believe, and just overhead a moment ago, something I have never seen in Washington in the 16 years I've been here, military jets are now patrolling the skies over Washington, D.C. We'll try to find out more about that explosion, but it was a low thud, and I'm now seeing that there is a great deal of activity over toward the direction of the Supreme Court.
All right.
Back to you, John.
Britt Hume is with us. Britt?
John, I'm looking now on one of our remote cameras here at a picture of the scene at the Pentagon. This is a picture looking down Interstate 395, which is, you probably know, John, is a major thoroughfare in and out of Washington that is used by commuters every day in large numbers. And we're getting a sense that from a reporter out there at the scene has just said that there's been another loud bang out there, whether that is a further explosion initiated in an attack or whether it is simply a secondary blast, the result of the continuing fire. But the situation there at the Pentagon continues to evolve. We'll keep you posted.
All right. Britt Hume in Washington, thank you. Our Rick Leventhal is on the ground in Lower Manhattan, where these scenes of chaos and utter confusion are just mind-numbing. Rick, go ahead. Rick is not able to hear me, but this is the scene in Lower Manhattan where the upper floors of the World Trade Center, Tower 1, apparently have completely collapsed.
5 blocks from the World Trade Center, and we were standing here when there was some sort of collapse or explosion.
Where he is. Also, the minority leader of the Senate, Trent Lott, and House Speaker Denny Hastert, we know, have been taken to safe locations as well. Let's get an update on the situation in Manhattan. Molly Falconer is at St. Vincent's Hospital. Clearly there have been perhaps thousands of casualties today when those two towers came down. Molly, what can you tell us?
John, this is a hospital under siege. This block is under siege. Police have got the entire area blocked off with what looks like police barriers. So far, we have about 152 people who have come into this hospital. People are out in...
We lost communications with Molly Falconer. You can understand why. It is a chaotic day, and many of this city's and this nation's communications infrastructure, satellite dishes, television towers, and so forth, were located on top of the World Trade Center. And the World Trade Center, both towers, are essentially gone now, a smoking pile of rubble. As you can see, that smoke column still billowing out of lower Manhattan. Rick Leventhal was in downtown Manhattan when the buildings came down and has an update for us from lower Manhattan. Rick?
Well, John, we're on Church Street at Reed Street, for those of you familiar with lower Manhattan, just a few blocks away from World Trade. Still thick black smoke billowing from the scene where both towers collapsed. Again, just a few blocks away from us. We were standing out here on Church Street when both towers came tumbling down. And each time there was a huge cloud of smoke and debris that came roaring down this street, and everyone literally ran for their lives. At this point, the police have been efforting to establish a perimeter. They're trying to keep people back and make sure that no one interferes with their job, which is to try and secure the area and then get inside that World Trade Center rubble to see whether or not they can locate any survivors who may have been inside the building or just outside the building when it came tumbling down. We want to bring in Mark Walsh, who's a freelancer for Fox. You live just a few blocks away and witnessed.
Dude, I live on the 43rd floor of a building, which is 5 blocks from the World Trade Center itself. I witnessed the entire thing from beginning to end.
People talk about how it looked like a movie. I know when I came walking down here early this morning and saw both towers on fire and people on every street corner, it was like a movie. But you watched the planes hit the towers.
I was watching with my roommate. It was approximately several minutes after the first plane had hit. I saw this plane come out of nowhere and just ream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
Obviously, there were a lot of people inside the buildings at the time.
Two guys from the 7th precinct, the 1st precinct, the fire department right here, the 7th truck, those guys are all right there at ground zero when those things went down. And God bless, I know there's a lot of guys there that were around there, and hopefully they made it out.
What was happening around you and the streets around you as this was all going down?
Absolute pandemonium. From my viewpoint up 43 floors, I could see people running like ants, just absolutely scurrying for their lives. Billows of smoke coming through the streets, just walking down the street, just pushing everybody back. And then several minutes after, it looked like it had just snowed over the entire area.
Yeah, the debris, the soot was thick on the street. There's still a dusting of it out here. But when I was standing here and the towers collapsed, we saw police officers running for their lives, screaming, "Get back, get back, get back!" And I'll tell you, that's a wake-up call when you see cops running for their lives, and people too, women's pushing baby carriages, that sort of thing.
Well, you had the first tower first. That one, when that first went down, it just pushed everybody back, and it was a good 15 minutes before the second tower finally collapsed.
Yeah.
And it was just overwhelming, and by that point, it was just insane.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of similar stories from people who were inside the building. One gentleman we spoke to earlier today, John, was on the 77th floor and said it was a relatively orderly evacuation at that point after the first plane hit the first tower. Everyone going down the stairs, not a lot of panic. But when they got to the 6th floor, he says they felt a second shake. And then people started to really be concerned. Obviously, there were people in the building at the time of this, and some of those people, they haven't recovered them yet. And that's a big issue right now, is trying to get the rescue workers and the emergency crews to the building. There were police officers there and emergency crews there when this was all happening, and they were right at ground zero when it all went down. Can we talk to you? What's your role out here right now?
Just standing by right now. Can't say what role I'm playing right now.
Well, there's a lot of standing by. There's also concern that some of these other buildings might actually come down. this building right here with the glass that you see, the nearest tall building, that has structural damage as well. We saw a lot of glass broken out, and a corner of the building appeared to be in distress, and there's concern that there might actually be another collapse of that building. And I can also tell you that when we first got here, we were a few blocks up. We could actually see debris from one of the planes on the street, a huge gear at one point, looked like a piece of an engine at another point. So that debris is still littering that area up there. They had roped it off with police tape, and they had FBI agents out there, and that was just before the first tower came tumbling down and everyone went running away. So there's evidence out here. There's a lot of work left to be done, and as you can imagine, the streets are a bit chaotic at this point. But I just want to show you one drastic difference looking north as opposed to looking south. Blue skies, clear streets, not a lot going on over there, but then come back around this way, Dan, and you'll see just smoke billowing from the scene. Still obviously a major disaster waiting to be cleaned up. Back to you, John.
All right, Rick Leventhal in Lower Manhattan, thank you very much. A dark day in America, September 11th, 2001. 2 planes strike the World Trade Center, obliterate it. It has collapsed. Another plane hits the Pentagon. It is still on fire, and we may not be done yet. Britt Hume, our Washington managing editor, is in D.C. Britt?
John, just some notes from our State Department reporter Terry Schultz. All U.S. diplomatic posts worldwide have been notified of what has happened here and have been encouraged to take what is called appropriate action. Ambassadors in such a situation have the right, should they choose to close embassies. It's worth noting here that Secretary of State Colin Powell is out of the country. He was down in Lima, Peru, is on his way back. He has released remarks saying that this is a terrible tragedy and adding, this is from Colin Powell, Secretary of State, the U.S. government will find those responsible. At the State Department, which has been largely evacuated, it's worth noting that Deputy Secretary of State, and now for the moment at least Acting Secretary of State Richard Armitage, is there and has elected to stay in the building. So that is the state of play here as we continue to watch fire, which, as you noted, is still burning at the Pentagon, and we watch, obviously, the southern skies to see whether anything comes of this report of a plane bound here. I should add to that, by the way, this report to this business about a plane being on its way here, that that Senator Kent Conrad, remember the Democratic leadership on the Hill, chairman of the Budget Committee, told our Colin Spencer just a short time ago that he was aware that 16 U.S. warplanes had been scrambled and were in the air in this area. So any airplane, I think, that attempts to attack Washington or crash into it is probably going to have to contend with them, and I wouldn't want to bet that it would ever happen. But it does raise the possibility, of course, of an ugly incident in the skies in or near Washington. John?
Britt, we know that President Bush is okay. We know he is on board Air Force One, but it would seem that they are not going to be bringing him back to Washington at this point?
John, I don't think we know that, and I think that that there's a very great likelihood that the Bush administration will want to have him here and in familiar surroundings and seen in familiar surroundings as soon as possible in an effort to calm the nation. This is a nation right now, mind you, except for the things that we have been able to quote, that except for the remarks and the additional remarks that we heard from President Bush earlier this morning, just before he took off from down in Florida to come back here, this is a nation that has not heard publicly from its government. And at such times, obviously, it is characteristic of a government that you send somebody out, they stand before a camera, they tell you what the state of play is, they furnish information, they seek to assure people. Under these circumstances, with people evacuating buildings in Washington and everybody on a high state of alert, it's understandable that wouldn't have happened. But one has to imagine that the administration will want that to happen as soon as it is safe for it to happen. So I would imagine that the president is headed in this direction, whether he is headed to the Andrews Air Force Base outside Washington where he would normally land or some other location. Obviously, we don't yet know. We got an eye on that for sure, though.
Is there a broadcasting capability aboard Air Force One? Could he address the nation from the plane if he chose?
Every known form of modern communication is there, but my guess is, John, that he'll want to be seen. I don't think he wants to be broadcast, you know, with Americans in the streets and others, people within government buildings on fire and so forth. My guess is that he's going to want to be seen, but we'll see about that. He could, of course, broadcast from Air Force One if he chose to.
Britt Hume, our Washington managing editor. The pictures tell the story, folks. It is an awful day in America. Your lives, safe to say, will change from this day forward. Newt Gingrich called this a 21st century Pearl Harbor, and that may be an understatement. There could be perhaps, well, on a given day there would be 50,000 people working in the World Trade Centers, and both of those towers in that World Trade Center are gone now after an apparent terrorist strike, another terrorist strike at
Today, we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
America is under attack, and people around the world are watching in disbelief as it unfolds on live television. The pictures are unbelievable. First, one plane hits the World Trade Center, and then, unbelievably, it happened again. Cameras captured a second jet as it hit the other tower and burst into a ball of flames. Almost simultaneously, explosions rocked the Pentagon as another plane crashed into a helicopter pad nearby.
And then both towers of the Trade Center came crumbling down, blanketing New York City in a cloud of smoke.
That terrorist attack is first on Fox at noon. It started first at the World Trade Center.
And then, if that wasn't enough, terrorists
bang! Right into the middle of it.
Expect to see something of this magnitude, but we have coordinated well with the city. We're going to continue to make sure we provide all the support we can. We do have emergency services and emergency transportation running. I know the reports have been inaccurate. We do have limited rail service out of Grand Central to the northern suburbs, limited rail service out of Brooklyn and Queens to Long Island. We're working to make sure that bus service, to the extent possible, continues, and we're trying to get subway service back on track. It's not there yet, but the coordination has been excellent. It's just in an attack of this magnitude. We just have to focus on responding and helping people at this point.
And do you have any idea how many people have been hospitalized or how many hospitals are involved, whether they extend beyond the city?
Not at this point, but every emergency service, every hospital that can provide assistance is providing assistance. The people have been just terrific in their response, and we're going to continue to make sure that response is as strong as it can be.
Governor, take a moment and tell me, not as the governor necessarily, but as a resident of this state, an important player in the affairs of this state, what you're thinking today.
This is an enormous tragedy. I have friends in those towers. I have friends who were there this morning that we haven't heard from. And our thoughts go to the people who are there, to their families, to all those who are suffering at this time, and we will be there to help, and we will be there to do everything we can to make sure that the support and the services necessary are provided.
Governor, thank you. Governor George Pataki joining us here. The National Guard has been activated to support New York City Police. Andrea Koppel is on board a flight with the Secretary of State. Andrea, what are you hearing from officials there?
Well, Aaron, Secretary Powell has been in Peru since last night. He was here to attend the Organization of American States General Assembly. Obviously, when he got the news of the attacks in the United States, his aides scrambled to prepare things for him to leave. We are now, as you say, on board his plane. We're about to take off from Lima to head back to Washington. While at the OAS General Assembly, Secretary Powell said it was a terrible tragedy that had fallen on all who believe in democracy, but he said that will never kill the spirit of the American people. He also said that America will bring those responsible to justice, Aaron. There was also a minute of silence at the Organization of American States, and Secretary Powell obviously had to abruptly change his plans. He was supposed to be leaving Peru later this afternoon to head on to Colombia for his first trip there. But obviously, the attacks in the United States have changed that, and he's headed back to Washington. Aaron?
Andrea, give me a sense of the Secretary's demeanor. I mean, we know this is a man who has been through a lot in his life, has seen a lot in his life. Did he appear shaken to you?
I would say that Secretary Powell is someone who doesn't show his emotions in that way. This is a man with 35 years of military experience, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, former National Security Advisor himself, who's seen a lot in his day. And so I would say that obviously he appeared somber, very serious, but in terms of any other emotion, I would say that he's able to keep that very close to his chest.
Andrea, thank you. Andrea Koppel, flying back with the Secretary of State from South America, our colleague Judy Woodruff in Washington. Judy?
Aaron, we have joining us now on the phone from the Pentagon, our military affairs correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. Jamie, I understand you are inside the perimeter of where the commercial jetliner came down at the Pentagon.
Collapse of that side of the building. You're seeing the smoke, of course, to my rear. We're reporting from an east side vantage point along a highway that's a major artery here. It is also a place where there has been a constant alert looking skyward, repeated concerns that another plane was heading this way up toward the Potomac. These have been concerns that have been out there for a couple of hours. None of them have been realized yet. Of course, the tragedy was that at about 9:20 this morning Eastern time, that plane crashed into the west side of the Pentagon. You can see overhead frequently helicopters that are circling the area, of course, looking to provide some visual sighting in case anybody, any sort of invader, anything like that, wants to take to the air. It's interesting, these helicopters also will hover on the ground. There are any number of highways here, and they would be looking for suspicious vehicles, that type of thing. We are told there are casualties at the Pentagon. We have not been able to get an accurate figure. We are not exactly sure at the moment of the whereabouts of the Secretary of Defense. But the building has virtually been evacuated, if not totally evacuated. There is heavy security there, investigations going on as they try and find out what happened. We constantly see sirens and hear sirens and see ambulances go by, many of them from Walter Reed Military Hospital on the other side of Washington, clearly going in there to help with whatever casualties there are. We also have seen a couple of times F-16s, at least one F-16 flying overhead a couple of times. That was reported as to be the case of the Pentagon scrambling fighter jets in case another plane was heading this way. But as I said, right now there has been no evidence of another plane coming this way. They're on full alert, of course, and trying to now recover from the severe damage that hit the other side of the building. Judy?
All right, Bob Franken, I just want to remind our viewers that the section of the Pentagon that was hit was between the 4th, 5th, and 6th corridors. This confirmed apparently a little earlier today by Wesley Clark, General Clark, a former NATO chief. He said from what he could tell, it appears this was the Army section of the Pentagon, planning and logistics area where certainly Army leaders would have been working in their offices. I want to read for you now a statement from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, quoting, "We are outraged at this cowardly attack on the people of the United States. Our heartfelt prayers are with the victims and their families, and we stand strongly united behind the President as our Commander-in-Chief." And I want to clarify that this is a statement by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I want to clarify that this is from the leadership of the Congress. I misunderstood when I was handed this just a moment ago. And continuing, congressional leaders, we will work with the President to ensure that the full resources of the United States government are brought to bear to protect the American people and to punish the perpetrators of these unconscionable acts. May God bless America. And just quickly, before I go back to Aaron Brown in New York, hospitals in Washington dealing with the casualties from the Pentagon Washington Hospital Center, 29 patients, a blood shortage, we are being told, in Washington. So any of you who are able to get to a hospital anywhere in the Washington area, it is very possible that there is a need for blood to be donated. So we will just put that information out there as well. Aaron, now back to you in New York.
Judy, thanks. We now are being told that Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, has been evacuated. Again, this is another one of those multi-terminal airports. It's an enormous airport, and that is being evacuated. At least one of the flights, and perhaps two if memory serves me, that has gone down today was headed towards Los Angeles, one towards San Francisco. We also have a report that Disney World in Orlando has been evacuated. Someone said to me a moment ago, before the day is over, everything's going to be shut down. And that seems to be where we're headed. CNN's Richard Roth is on the streets of New York, and he can join us now. Richard, what can you tell us?
Aaron, New Yorkers think they've seen everything, but they'll say they're amazed at what has happened, stunned. Right now behind me, what normally would be the World Trade Center is no more, a huge cloud of white smoke. And right now it's like a war zone. Thousands of New Yorkers streaming north. The mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, has told everyone to get north of Canal Street. We're several miles north of it. Right now, New Yorkers are trying to get out of Manhattan. There's a ferry on the west side going to New Jersey. It's really the only access out. The mayor advising that people should take the subways. We have seen dozens of emergency vehicles, hundreds, firemen being bussed in, decontamination vans coming in, call for blood donations. New Yorkers, their faces, their expressions, stunned, amazed right now. With us, several of those people who witnessed some of the carnage today. Tell us what you saw when you exited the subway station due to...
My husband, that's all I wanted to do was let him know I was alive because he knew I was in the World Trade. And I got my office and they connected me to my husband, and then we heard the second fall of the World Trade Center. And I'm astonished by the bombing. I just want to make a statement that these New York and mothers, but you know what? Whatever we have to do to eradicate the country or the world of the...
tax every bit of resource in New York City, particularly since so many of the police officers and firefighters on the scene were injured.
Let me stop you for a second. I want to talk specifically about what you suspect is happening, but I want to go to LA first. Frank Buckley is in Los Angeles with us. Frank, what can you tell us about what's going on there?
Aaron, we just saw what appeared to be the worst possible situation. The last thing that we want to show you, in fact, people arriving here at the airport apparently friends or family members of some of the victims of at least one of the flights. 3 flights were bound for Los Angeles, and they are not arriving here, obviously. Now friends and family are beginning to trickle in. We haven't seen any until this moment, 2 people just arriving here at the airport. We can tell you that just within the last 15 minutes also, this terminal they have begun a process of evacuating this terminal, and in fact all of Los Angeles airport is being evacuated now, we are told, by airport police, who we just spoke to just a few minutes ago. I'd like to let you hear from Lieutenant Howard Whitehead of the Los Angeles Airport Police as to the status here at LAX.
And because we work with other agencies who are conducting closures outside of the airport, I can't get information right now.
3 flights were bound for Los Angeles that appear to have been involved today. What accommodations are being made for the friends and family of passengers?
That's being handled by the airlines. They're having a meeting now concerning that, so that information you have to get from the airlines.
So officially, what are you starting at this point?
We're starting a total evacuation of the airport.
Will that include both workers and passengers?
Only key employees will remain at the airport.
This is the entire airport that will be evacuated?
Yes, ma'am.
Why
the
evacuation?
Because the evacuation has been ordered. I can't tell you why, but that's how it stands now.
Is there a security threat to the airport?
It's precautionary at this point.
Have you ever seen anything like this before in Los Angeles?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And what is going to be your role, the police department's role in this? What are you doing?
We're protecting the public. That's what our job is.
Will roads in and out of the airport be closed as well? Will people be able to get into the airport?
Right now, this thing is fluid. We're working as we go with the changes, so I couldn't give you a definite on anything right now.
How many police officers more or less
Thanks very much.
here in the airport on a regular day?
Other agencies involved, I couldn't give you an exact figure.
Right now, there are other agencies?
Yes, ma'am. That's all I have for right now. Thank you. My name is Lieutenant Whitehead.
So this is purely...
That was Lieutenant Howard Whitehead of the LAX Police telling us again that just within the last 15 or 20 minutes an order has come down, a command decision to evacuate the terminals at LAX. Up until this point, of course, flights were not being allowed in or out. Now they are evacuating all the terminals except for key personnel. Also here with me now is Lieutenant Colonel Al Van Cleef of the Salvation Army. You have the very difficult task of helping to coordinate the grief counseling. Can you tell me about the accommodations that are being made for family members of Flight 11, 77, and 175?
We have 6 grief counselors on site now, 2 of the teams ready. We're waiting word now from American Airlines. They are diligently working on the plans as far as a private location where the family will be received. As soon as we're aware of that, then they will make contact with us so our counselors can proceed to where family members will be arriving. We've done the same thing here in Los Angeles as well as San Francisco and Washington, D.C.
Very difficult day for you, sir. Thanks very much for joining us. That is the latest from Los Angeles. Aaron, back to you.
Frank, thank you. Frank Buckley in Los Angeles. We are in the midst of extraordinary national tragedy, attacks in Washington and New York, attacks on airliners, the dimensions of which are not yet clear, but what is clear is that this is a day unlike any other. The worst fears of officials around the country, security, intelligence, military officials, political leaders, worst fears being realized, being played out in New York and Washington, 80 miles outside of Pittsburgh where a plane went down. Other planes have crashed. We don't know the circumstances precisely. We now have a report perhaps of another building here in New York that has collapsed. CNN producer Rose Arce is on the phone. Rose, what can you tell us?
Yes, there's another building very close to the World Trade Center that was hit by debris some time ago, and it appears to be on the verge of collapse. Also, that enormous plume of smoke that you see that's surrounding the building, there are suspicions that it's not all smoke, but that there's a gas leak within that smoke. And that has caused a tremendous amount of panic in this area. The police have been saying that they're now evacuating all of lower Manhattan, and you can see people moving north in a flood through these streets that are just filled with ash. You know, as you walk through the ash, you can see debris from inside the World Trade Center itself, a very, very eerie scene, pieces of paper from people's desks, office supplies, many, many blocks from the site of the actual explosion, where they now are fearing that there may be yet another explosion because of this potential gas leak.
Rose, thank you. Rose Arce, who's on the streets of Manhattan. Back to Jerry Hauer, who who ran the mayor's emergency response team, and I'm not sure I got the title right, but the essence is correct. When you all, after the '93 attack on the buildings, and you sat down and tried to redo a plan, which I assume happened, did you anticipate anything of this magnitude?
Well, we have plans in place in New York City for massive incidents, but an incident like this is very difficult to plan for, just because of the number of people that have been, the number of responders that have been injured. There are
the responders, we mean police, fire,
EMS,
rescue, correct.
Right. There are literally hundreds of people coming from New Jersey. As you heard from the governor early, the National Guard will be activated to help with law enforcement to help seal the area. I know that FEMA will be activating their search and rescue teams to assist with going through the debris. This is going to be a long-term operation. It is going to be a very difficult one because, as you heard earlier, there's still a gas leak in the building which is fueling this fire. And until the gas is turned off, that fire could burn for some time.
Stay with us, Jerry. Back to Washington, CNN's Judy Woodruff. Judy, you have more here. What can you tell us?
Well, Aaron, we are monitoring, of course, statements from around the globe, and we've just, in the last few minutes, been able to get a statement from the Taliban ambassador to Pakistan. The Taliban, of course, being the religious organization that is the party controlling the government in Afghanistan. The name Mullah Abdul Salam Zaif said in reaction to the news of these terror attacks in the United States, and I am quoting, "We want to tell the American children that Afghanistan feels your pain, and we hope that the courts find justice." Now, this statement, again, made by a Taliban ambassador to Pakistan, his name, Mullah Abdul Salam Zaif, he made it at a news conference in Islamabad. And I would just add that we're told that at the top of the hour, which it would be perhaps 1 o'clock Eastern time, we're expecting a news conference live from Kabul, Afghanistan. That is the capital of Afghanistan, the Taliban being the controlling religious party in that country, Afghanistan being the country where we have every reason to believe Osama bin Laden, the leader of a huge terrorist network, continues to live in hiding. The Taliban has denied his presence there from time to time, but it is believed by those who follow the activities of his organization that he is in Afghanistan. So we will, of course, be watching that. Let me just... All right, Aaron, I want to go back to you now in New York.
Thank you, Judy. We have on the phone with us New York's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, Give us your best piece of information as the situation right now.
The situation right now is a massive rescue effort that's going on right now. We're trying to evacuate thousands and thousands of people. We have as many of our police and fire personnel as we have down in the southern part of Manhattan, evacuating people, trying to save as many lives as possible. We've been in communication with Governor Pataki, who's gotten the National Guard ready, and they're going to come in and relieve us a little bit later in the day. And we've spoken to the White House, and the urban search and rescue teams will come here also to assist us. But right now, it's the New York City Police and Fire, EMS, that are down there trying to evacuate as many people as we possibly can. And we've asked everyone to leave Lower Manhattan if they can on their own so that it relieves our efforts. And this will be going on all day. It's a horrible, horrible tragedy.
It is that. Mr. Mayor, can you tell me, is it a... Are people panicking down there, or
no,
are they
people?
leaving?
I was, I was there right in a building that got hit by the debris when the first tower collapsed. So I had to evacuate with people, and we were trapped in the building for a while. And we finally were able to get out, and we all walked north. And people, everything that I observed, even though it was hundreds, maybe in some cases thousands of people that were walking down the street, they were orderly, they were calm, they handled themselves really
and
probably better than anybody had any right to expect.
And Mr. Mayor, we were told one of the problems, and Lord knows there are hundreds of problems, one of the problems was that a large number of police, fire, EMS personnel have also been injured in this. Can you shed any light on that?
I don't even want to contemplate what the number will be. But when the building collapsed, we had a lot of our police officers and firefighters in the building, and I know many of them. A great deal of help from the surrounding areas. The governor has mobilized the state in order to make hospitals available to us outside of Manhattan. Any hospital personnel or emergency personnel.
Because of term limits, but the election has been postponed. Jeff, just step back for a second.
Well, that's
you talk about anger, and we stand up here and we look at this, and we've all listened to what's been going on now as we've been on the air for 3 hours or so. And there was a woman that Richard Roth interviewed about a half hour ago who said what I suspect most Americans are feeling right now, and some would like to say and can't, how angry she was, how cowardly this all seemed to her. Quickly, we go back to Washington and Judy Woodruff. Judy?
Aaron, government sources telling CNN that President Bush, who had been in Florida for a 2-day trip and who broke that trip off this morning to head back to Washington, will now not return to Washington. Repeating, President Bush will not return to Washington. We do not know where the president will land or whether where his aircraft will go, Air Force One, but we just are passing along this information just as soon as we have it. Again, as we were talking to former NATO head Wesley Clark, General Wesley Clark, a little while ago, he pointed out that there are contingency plans that the military and the security people have for the president in a situation like this, so we're not going to do any speculating right here about where the president might be going. Joining us now on the telephone, there is some information we want to share with you about aircraft in the sky that is, we're told, is safe right now. We're told by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, they're telling us 50 aircraft are safely in the sky right now, all within about 50 miles of their destination. But in the meantime, we want to talk to Utah Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, who's joining us on the telephones. Senator Hatch, are you there?
Yes, I am.
And I know my colleague Wolf Blitzer, who's here with me in the studio in Washington, had also talked with you. Senator, you've been briefed by what authorities?
Well, I'm on both the Judiciary Committee and also the Intelligence Committee, and I've been briefed by the highest levels of the FBI and of the intelligence community. And I just have to say our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims of this terrible tragedy caused by a bunch of cowards. And there's no justification for what these cowards have done to purely innocent Americans, but I do have some information.
Senator Hatch, this is Wolf Blitzer. Tell us, I spoke with you earlier on the telephone, but tell us precisely what you are now being told in these high-level briefings about those who may and repeat the word may have been responsible for these attacks.
You're right. They've come to the conclusion that this looks like the signature of Osama bin Laden and that he may be the one behind this. I think most authorities agree that this is something that we doubt seriously if Iran, Iraq, or Libya would try and do, because they know of the massive response that we'd have to bring down on them. But there was no advance notice at all. They had no way of knowing that this was going to happen. It was carefully planned. And what it means is it seems to me that if that turns out to be true, we're going to have to revitalize Shah Massoud and the other people in Afghanistan who basically are fighting to get rid of this type of terrorism. And I think we're going to have to ask our friends in Pakistan to get, in turn, to be more cooperative than they have in the past. And then we'd have to work with our allies to have an international strategy to combat this type of international jihad against the West.
We're listening to Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah. We also have joining us on the telephone Senator John McCain from his home in Arizona. Senator McCain, I assume you've been talking to authorities as well.
Yes, Judy, and I'm on Capitol Hill in Washington.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yes. The situation is so serious that words don't describe it. I think that it's clear that the organization and magnitude of the attacks required more than a few people to perpetrate it, and it'll take some time to determine who they are and who supported these attacks, but I think we'll find them out, and they will suffer the full measure of our justice. This is obviously an act of war that's been committed on the United States of America.
What do you mean, obviously, an act of war, Senator McCain?
These attacks clearly constitute an act of war. The unwarranted, unprovoked attacks against innocent American citizens is clearly an act of war, and one that requires that kind of national response and international response.
Senator Orrin Hatch, I believe, is also still with us, Senator. And Senator Hatch, you mentioned the bin Laden organization. Former NATO head General Wesley Clark also said to us about an hour ago in an interview that he believes that it's only the bin Laden organization that is capable of carrying out attacks this coordinated and on this massive a scale. What are you basing your information on?
Well, keep in mind, there are nations that also could carry out these attacks, but I don't think would dare do that, knowing that their signature is going to be figured out. We're going to find out who did this, and we're going after the bastards. It's that simple. And I just have to say that both the FBI and our intelligence community believe that this is a bin Laden signature. And I believe it is. I was the first to point out bin Laden to the Clinton administration and said they're going to kill Americans, and we've got to get on top of that. And I think we're going to have to get on top of it, because this is a cowardly bunch who will stop at nothing to, like you say, have a jihad or a war against the United States, and to do it in the most cowardly fashion.
But Senator McCain, I mean, there will be those who are saying the United States was taking all reasonable precautions. We had security at airports, metal detectors, and so forth and so on. How much more is going to have to be done to prevent something like these things from happening again?
Judy, I don't think our lifestyles will be the same for a long time since it was before these attacks, as far as use of transportation, particularly airports, are concerned. There have been warnings about whether our security was good enough and whether the proper measures were being taken. I'm sure that'll all be reviewed. By the way, I have no information as to who caused this, and I hesitate to speculate, but I am confident that the President of the United States will lead us, and we will find out who has carried out these acts. And I think it's a little premature to make that determination until we have the hard facts, but I'm sure that we'll get them. The other aspect of this is that it may highlight over time the need for more human intelligence. We have very good technical intelligence capabilities, satellites, etc., but for many years we haven't had the kind of human intelligence which determines motivations before actions are taken.
I'm going I'm going to interrupt you, Senator McCain. These are the first pictures we have in. This is from Somerset County, Pennsylvania. This is where the United Airlines flight, I believe it is 176, went down. I'm sorry, I'm correcting. United Airlines 93. This was a Boeing 757 bound from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco. It crashed in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, near the town of Shanksville, south of Pittsburgh. We're told about 80 miles outside of Pittsburgh in western Pennsylvania. It is not known how many passengers or crew were on board, although initial reports indicated no survivors. Again, these are the first pictures we have coming in from WTAJ there in the Pittsburgh area. United Airlines telling us earlier they had lost this flight, and they knew that it had crashed near Pittsburgh. There is a second United Airlines flight, the Boeing 767 Flight 175, bound from Boston to Los Angeles, has crashed. The airline's still telling us at this point that they do not know where. We don't have information on the number of people aboard. It is possible, but not confirmed, that this would have been the second plane to hit the World Trade Center. Now again, 2 United Airlines flights, and in addition to American Airlines flights, the Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles, this was a Boeing 767 with 81 passengers on board, 9 crew members, 2 pilots. This is believed to be one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center. All 4 of these planes that we're describing to you now, these flights, all headed to California. The second American Airlines Flight 77, this is a Boeing 757, left Dulles Airport near Washington on its way to Los Angeles. It had 58 passengers on board, 4 crew, 2 pilots. This plane unaccounted for. However, a commercial jet was seen crashing into the Pentagon a few hours ago, and it is believed that this could have been the one, but again, not confirmed. So 2 commercial airliners, American Airlines, 2 United Airlines. And I would just add at this point, because to be reassuring to some extent to those of you who are watching, we've been reporting that all flights within the United States have been canceled. There's been a complete hold down on all commercial travel. However, there were planes that were already in the air when these terrible incidents took place this morning. And as of a few moments ago, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, was reporting that there were still 50 aircraft in the skies. Now, some of those may have landed in the last few minutes, but that was the information as of a few minutes ago. All of them were said to be within 50 or so miles of their destination. Now, I'm getting new information in my ear. Now, reporting our congressional correspondent Kate Snow, you're looking at a picture of the Pentagon live. There's still smoke billowing out of our military command center in the United States. As we look at these pictures, I'm going to turn it over right now to our congressional correspondent Kate Snow, who has with her 2 members of Congress. Kate?
Judy, it's been a bit difficult to get in touch with members of Congress. As we've been reporting, the Capitol has been shut down. You can see it behind me here. You can see that everything's fine there, but it is in a state of lockdown. They've evacuated the Capitol. Joining me here on the roof of a church, I might add, we've managed to get up on the roof here to get a vantage point, is Congressman Curt Weldon, a Republican from Pennsylvania, around the Philadelphia area, not exactly where that video that we just saw, the other end of the state, and also Congressman Ed Schrock from Virginia Beach, from the state of Virginia, also a Republican. You both serve on the Armed Services Committee. In fact, you were in the middle of a briefing. You were about to talk to reporters about the need for more money for our military. Let me start with you, Congressman Weldon. You've been talking to me up here. You've been expressing outrage at all of this. You've been saying this is a failure of the U.S. intelligence system.
It's a failure of our intelligence system. I asked the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Capitol just 45 minutes ago in a meeting with 70 senators and House members, how much advance notice did you have? He said none. There was no intelligence. Our FBI and our CIA are there to intercept raw data. This is a massive operation. And it's a failure that was caused by a lack of resources and by a complacency that set in America over the past 10 years. A complacency that convinced all of us that with the demise of the Soviet Union, there were no more threats. It's a tragedy that it took the loss of thousands of lives to wake this country up and realize that our #1 responsibility is not education and I'm a teacher, and it's not health care, I'm married to a nurse. It is in fact the security and the safety of the American people. And today, our government failed the American people.
Congressman Schrock, how much information have you as a member of Congress been able to get? I know that the members have been milling around here trying to get information. Have you been able to get information?
Not a whole lot. The most information we got was when we went to the U.S. Capitol Police headquarters and they were piecing together what had happened and trying to feed us as they got that, but nothing substantive. It seems like there's no game plan in operation.
Do the two of you know why you were evacuated from the U.S. Capitol?
Absolutely. I talked to Bill Livingood, the Sergeant-at-Arms in the Capitol, and he said, Kurt, we've been told that a plane is taken off from Reagan and we think it may be heading toward the Capitol. I mean, they've hit our economic center, the World Trade Center, they hit our Pentagon, they hit our State Department. So the obvious next item you'd like to hit is the U.S. Capitol and perhaps the Supreme Court.
And obviously those are unconfirmed reports that any plane, but there were rumors here for a good 2 hours that there were potentially planes headed this direction.
Now we're in total lockdown, as you said, and members are basically scattered around the city, but we're going to get back to work because we're going to convince these cowards that America doesn't back down, that our government will continue to operate in spite of these terrorist activities.
You said we're at war.
We're at war. We're absolutely at war. This is 21st century war. These are the kinds of activities that we expect from cowards and terrorist groups.
I need to go back to Judy Woodruff now in Washington. Judy.
All right, Kate, thank you. And I want to tell our viewers that we do know now that President Bush has landed near Shreveport, Louisiana, at Barksdale Air Force Base. We're told that he is talking to reporters. They're
as a ploy, and that is a quote from the New York Times before this happened. So I just want to underscore again, we are going to need the support of all our allies in Europe, the Russians, the Chinese, and any other country that might have in the past flirted with playing both sides of the street. Nothing like this has happened in American history. The full dimensions of it are still not clear to anyone, but I think we all can imagine it's going to be heart-wrenching in its dimensions as it becomes fully apparent, and we're not going to be able to leave countries playing two sides here. And I'm sure my friend Bob Gates would not disagree with that.
Let me, Mr. Gates, I want to come back to you. Mr. Holbrook, stay with us for a minute. I believe now we have the president. This is the president on tape a few moments ago. Well, obviously we're having a technical problem. Let me just tell you what, again, the president said in what has been his second statement. His first statement came after the first attacks here in New York. A short time ago, the president said, we have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people. He added, we make no mistake, said the president, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible. I think we're going to try and hear.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward, and freedom will be defended. I want to reassure the American people that the full resources of the federal government are working to assist local authorities to save lives and to help the victims of these attacks. Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts. I've been in regular contact with the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, the National Security Team, and my cabinet. We have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people. Our military at home and around the world is on high alert status, and we have taken the necessary security precautions to continue the functions of your government. We have been in touch with the leaders of Congress and with world leaders to assure them that we will do whatever is necessary to protect America and Americans. I ask the American people to join me in saying a thanks for all the folks who have been fighting hard to rescue our fellow citizens, and to join me in saying a prayer for the victims and their families. The resolve of our great nation is being tested, but make no mistake, we will show the world that we will pass this test. God bless.
That concludes the President's taped comments from Barksdale Military Base in Louisiana. The President of the United States speaking just a short time ago. We know not now where the President is. You heard him say that the United States military is on full alert. All security precautions could be taken, that he's been in touch with House, Senate leaders and other members of the administration, as well as with foreign leaders. He said we will hunt down and punish those who are responsible for what he called this cowardly act.